tell me about your prison, your jail time, and then ultimately your decision to leave the life. I know you first had a first charge that you went in for, but that didn't seem to, completely alter your life until it was that second sentence. Can you tell us about, how that ended up happening? Did you think that you would never get caught, or was everything starting to come down with the RICO and the Giuliani that you knew it was only a matter of time?
Yeah, I mean, look, I had a, pretty rough record. I mean, I was arrested 17, 18 times, and I went to trial 5 times, and each trial ended either in an acquittal or a dismissal. And the big thing for me was beating the Giuliani case, because if I lost that case, he would have given me probably 50 years, because I was one of the lead defendants, and I was acquitted. My co-defendant was convicted, and they got 30 years. So I'm the lead defendant. Would have got at least 50. Well, my life would have been over, basically, because out of 50, I had to do 30, 35. So it would have been done. But, that really put it in my head. And then when I got indicted on the whole gasoline racketeering case, that came, shortly after the acquittal on the Giuliani case, I just realized, I said, look, I'm not going to last. So my thing is, let me try to wrap everything up. The government really wanted a conviction on me, especially after I beat the Giuliani case. In a way, Brian, this is interesting. Giuliani helped me a lot. I'll tell you why. My partner, Rizzo, in the gas business, he became an informant. And he was testifying against me in the whole gasoline case. They indicted me based upon, his cooperation. Well, what happened when I went to trial on Giuliani, and Giuliani found out that the Eastern District, he was in the Southern District, the Eastern District had him as a witness. They wanted him to testify in Giuliani's case. And from what I understand, there was a big argument over it, because the Eastern District did not want to give up their witness. They went to Washington. Giuliani won. He testifies against me. We destroyed him on the stand. I get acquitted. So now the government in the Eastern District case, they're worried. We just destroyed their main witness. That's why, in my opinion, they were able to, or they wanted to do a deal with me. Otherwise, they would have never did a deal. They would have taken me to trial, or they wouldn't have taken less than 25 years. But as a result of that, I was able to make a deal for 10 years. I was under the old law, meaning I still could have made parole. I had a $15 million restitution and forfeiture. I gave up a lot of assets that I had at the time in connection with that. And I figured, okay, I'll wrap everything up. I'll move out to California when I get out of prison, and I'll get away from the life. And that was my plan. Excuse me. That's how I was going to work this all out, because I knew the life was in serious trouble.
And that's what you did in the end.
That's what I ended up doing. Yeah. I used because look, I knew when I got out on parole, I could use that as an excuse not to report back to Brooklyn, because it's a violation, if you're associating with anybody. So I figured I'm out in California, maybe everybody will forget about me, and I'll live happily ever after with my new wife, and that would be it. And so that was the plan. That's how I had it laid out. Now, it didn't actually work out that way, but eventually it did. But initially it didn't.
Right. I mean, you talk about being in that second time and them throwing you into solitary confinement where, basically something in you kind of broke or snapped. And then you're in there with a Bible and you really had something change. You had like an epiphany within yourself. And, it's interesting listening to you, Michael. It sounds like, it's very difficult to be in that life. I know a lot of guys, I've met a lot of people over the years in business and, hardcore ultra marathoners and stuff like that. But to live that life where you've got to hold everything inside, you can't necessarily even trust the guys around you, even your own father. You got the government coming after you. You're on trial. It's this whole game. It seems to me that's very few men can sustain that mental pressure over a long period of time. And that on top of the fact that you're in solitary and you're having this epiphany. I don't know. Tell us about that moment. And am I incorrect in assuming that mental pressure, it's gonna get you at some point?
Yeah, I mean, and I saw that happen to a lot of guys, Brian, but I did 5 years. I got out on parole. I was on parole for about 13 months. And it was really the worst time of my life as a free person, because I was basically dodging bullets. It became, public that I was walking away from the life. boss of my family, call my purse, go immediate contract on my life. He took it very personal when I walked away. My father, the feds come into prison, say your father went along with the contract. And again, knowing my father as well as I did, he probably just said, hey, if my son's going to, do this, what could I do? That's how he would have dealt with it, So he didn't argue it. He didn't fight it at that time. And so I was in trouble. I was dodging bullets. I mean, they did send some people out to get me. I had to leave my house a couple of times. And,
Are you in New York still? Are you still in New York for that 13 months?
I'm out in California. I wouldn't
Okay.
have made it in New York. There's no way I would have been able to do this in New York because I was too exposed there.
Wow.
But, and then I was trying to make a living. I still had a huge fine. I had so many things going bad. So I violated my parole. And the government was upset with me because they had picked me up in the morning and brought me into Newark, New Jersey to testify in a trial against the boss of Jersey, John Riggy, who was a dear friend of mine. And John and I had a deal where we were collecting a tariff on every window that came into any building in Manhattan. We had a tariff attached to it. And what happened was one of the guys that was involved in that was a co-defendant of mine on the Giuliani case. He gets convicted and he turns informant. So he tells the government that me and Riggy were partners. So the government brings me in and they say, you're going to testify against Riggy because we have all this information, or we're going to lock you up for perjury. We're going to indict you in the case. Bottom line, they bring me in there. I don't testify. They send me back to California. I refused. They send me back to California. And within 10 days or so, I'm violated on my parole. They were very upset with me. We're bringing new charges against you. You'll never see the street again. You're done. And that's it. They threatened me with murder charges and everything else. So that night, they put me in a hole in California jail, and they were going to bring me back to Brooklyn where my case was. And honestly, Brian, it was the worst night of my life. I said, look, I was just married I got married in July to my wife, my current wife, 35 years we're married. I said, we have a baby. I'm never going to see my wife again. The girl I did this all for, I'm going to lose her now. She waited for me for 5 years, 13 months on parole. Now I'm gone again. I said, they can't put me out on the yard. I got people looking to kill me. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in a 6x8 cell. So, it was a scary feeling. I'm going to be honest with you. I said, I'm hopeless. What am I going to do now? It's done. I'm finished. And I don't care what anybody says. Look, I did almost 3 years in the hole. It's tough to be in solitary like that. And when you think you're going to spend the rest of your life in there, depression, whatever you want to call it, it was rough. And that night, yeah, I say this all the time too, Brian. I used to demean people that were suicidal. I did. I said they're weak. They can't face up to their troubles. It's weakness. I don't do that anymore. Now, I wasn't suicidal that night. I wasn't that brave, but I can tell you, I wanted to lay my head on that big cot and just not wake up. It was too painful to think of my future. I said, this is it. And, long story short, and I've told this thousands of times in speaking events, a prison guard came by and just pushed the Bible through the slot on the door, and I picked it up, and it was a life-changing experience for me. Not immediately, but I spent 29 months and 7 days in that hole. And it was during that time that, my life and everything changed. You can call it an epiphany or a realization or, a come to Jesus moment. But it had a major impact on me that's lasted now 25 years.